Yes. Why, thank you, Dave, for your endless servitude.
I mean Craig.
What? I thought it was Dave.
Nope, it's
No,
been
it's
Craig this whole
Craigbot.
time. Yeah.
Oh, it looks like Dave, that bear who gives out like $50 to poor
Oh
people.
yeah.
Okay, so I was thinking that we'd make a dungeon, but it's really a ship raid. And we are raiding some pirates, and we're going to Robin Hood the gold back to our pockets.
I like it. Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Serious Sandy Shortbread. Today we are making another dungeon, this time with our good old friend Captain Waffles. He has the idea of doing a sea nautical type dungeon, and with him being a captain, you know, I think he's got some pretty good experience in this area.
Yes, Captain Waffles here. And after sailing the seas looking for the right toasters to take down, I've had my fair encounters with many a pirate. And now it's about time we raid some and get the gold for ourselves. Why should they have all the glory? We're going to do so legally.
And you're also joined today by Darcy Driver in the back seat, not as a captain, just here providing D&D expertise.
You can be the whipping boy.
I'll be the whipping boy.
No, me and Darcy are on the poop deck.
So are we going to do what we did with the last one and go like room to room, start at the top decks and work our way down, build it that way? Or I think Captain Waffles, because you have experience in like ship building and what would actually be functional as a ship. How about you like pitch us ship size so we can get a feel for what we're working with as far as like building rooms and enemies and stuff.
Yeah. So I was thinking about pitching what a ship looks like, and I can kind of give more of that insight of how, all right, how's the shape? How is the interaction between decks that going to work? And you guys would have more so the ideas on, ooh, this would be a fun trap to toss in here. Ooh, these would be perfect enemies to have in this room. So I think I'd like to start first with the main deck. And again, this is kind of based off of a Spanish gold carrying galleon that traversed to the New World. And there's many books and even some museums based off of the fleet that sunk just east of I believe it was Florida. And, huge Spanish gold went down in the bottom of the floor. And there's this whole story as to treasure hunters finding it. And that's part of the inspiration here. But yeah, so a 4 or 5 masted galleon that is controlled by pirates of some sort, and we're going to raid it. And the top deck, the topmost deck visible from the outside, like from the player's ship, is the most continuous and longest deck, the main deck. And there's not much to that. There's like perhaps a grating or something that you can see the next deck down on. And up forward, there is the forecastle, or the forecastle as it's known. And that's kind of like a quick access storehouse for things that you might need on deck. And then on the aft side is some superstructure. And that's like the captain's quarters and, yes, the poop deck. And, because, if you got to go, may as well go off the back end of the vessel so it doesn't, get plowed right into the front. So, I guess we got to think first, what type of pirates are there so that we can kind of imagine what a captain's quarters would look like.
Hmm. I really like the idea of gnomish pirates, but maybe that's just me.
I dig it. I like the idea of having some form of caster, because even like in traditional D&D lore, like if you read Drist, etc., having a caster on your ship is like a must-have. like particularly for defending against other magic at seas. So I like the idea of gnomes. I have no problem with that.
Oh, that's such a great idea too, because like modern day, or even more like World War II, vessels and submarines, it's like you weren't even allowed to be on one unless you were 5'4" or shorter, because it's so cramped. So imagine what sort of, like a five-masted galleon for gnomes would be like the size of a frigate for normal sized beings. So it's gonna be a really cramped fight. There's probably some elements we can work with here.
5 mast? This thing is huge.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
How many,
Yeah, although
approximately how many feet or meters long is that?
let's see. I'm actually trying to cross-reference with some other general arrangement and ship drawing layout. Let's see. We could go with like 160 feet.
Okay.
That is the length of the main deck. So that's the longest deck, As you go
Yeah.
further down, it's going to get shorter and shorter.
Yeah, because the bevel.
Mhm. And of course, the forecastle and the captain's quarters, that's superstructure on top of the main deck, so that's not as big. But yeah, like 160 to 200 feet, something like that. And it's really more of a four mast, and the fourth mast is kind of a cheat, just a little thing hanging up on the top end of the I forget what it's called, tree that sticks out at the very end of the bow, that the forwardmost of the large mast is kind of like tied off to.
Gotcha.
The word escapes me. But yeah, there's like a little tiny mast on that. So, oh man, I've totally lost my mind what we were talking about before that.
Gnomes. We got some magic-y gnomes.
Yes, gnomes. So gnomes, captain's quarters.
Do we want just the captain to be a gnome, or do we want the crew to be gnomish as well?
Everybody's going to be a gnome.
Okay.
What if just the captain was the gnome, and then his quarters were obnoxiously small, so none of the bigger, more rowdy crew could go in there and like take stuff and mutiny. But no, yeah, a full gnome vessel. I like this.
So let's start about how the approach and how that's going to work, because that's something that we always want to make sure we provide our listeners, is like mechanics of how to get to the encounter and start the encounter. Gun and lookout wise, we're talking what, like 8 cannons on a side? Hypothetical?
Yeah, well, 8 cannons on a single cannon deck per side. Yes. So if they built up more decks, you'd have more, of course.
But I'm just talking top level down. So top level, we'll put 8 to a side.
Okay. Yep. And just so that it's not a super overpowered vessel, maybe just the main deck and then the gunnery deck, which is the next one down, are going to be the only 2 cannon decks.
Okay.
Because of course there has to be a naval battle before you can even board the thing.
That's 8 cannons per deck, so like 8 on the top, 8 on the bottom too.
Yep, so each side has 16.
Perfect.
Each broadside.
So some recommendations for running this with your players. If you have druids who know how to use fog, try and metagame on their behalf to conceal their vessel, or have some means for them to intercept the ship while they're coming close to an island or something. Prepare to just board on the side stealthily, because this thing as built would decimate most smaller ships.
Yep. Ooh, how thick can you make water wall?
At this point, I think we'd be talking more use of wind wall, because it deflects projectiles. Because that would be a really great way to just automatically be able to approach the ship, is if you had a wind wall.
Yeah, little tip right there.
Yeah,
Stop an
because
entire broadside attack with one
right.
ball.
So, Captain, is this ship in dock when the encounter happens, or is it at sea?
Hmm. Well, I imagine that we could work it out that at dock at some pirate bay, we could extend the dungeon into a land-based pirate dungeon as well, some base. But for
Mhm.
right now, why don't we just stick to the vessel itself?
Perfect.
I think we need to leave that to DM discretion because, like I said, if you have casters or
Hmm,
like you are running a sea based campaign, you're going to have some ships and be able to actually board the normal way. Otherwise, yes, run this in port or, like I said, close to a place where they can just literally hop on from the land, or like it has to go through a gate, and the people in the party can just jump down onto the mast or up onto the crow's nest.
Yep.
yeah, kind of. I liked referencing Assassin's Creed Black Flag. The boarding was a little bit crazy if you went all the way up to the top mast and then try to jump across to their masts and then work your way down. But
Yeah,
it's fun. This is a game, so you can do whatever you want.
Indeed,
I
indeed.
too like that idea.
Now, so speaking of magic and whatnot, I imagine the level of this encounter or of this raid, it's not going to be very high level because I could totally see level 5, level 7. You're so powerful that it's like, oh, just normal old, beings like this that aren't some crazy eldritch monster. Easy fight. They're using normal cannons after all. Uh, it's not some crazy contraption. It's a cannon. So this would probably be lower to mid levels.
Hmm. Okay. Well, because the other thing we have to consider when we're talking about like balancing it is they're gonna have magic, so like particularly that would be a great reason to use the rock gnome recluses because they'd have mage hands. So you could cut the number of people that it would practically use in half because they can just cast mage hand and pull and push things and be manipulating stuff.
True.
So
Yep.
I even from like an in-game world building perspective, you don't need the realistic number because you have in-game reason to not do it.
Oh, what if you had just like one or two gnomes on each side and they were just controlling all these different mage hands and they were the ones doing the literal heavy lifting and the loading of the cannons and firing them off so that they wouldn't have to break their backs picking up these massive cannonballs compared to their own size.
I mean, as written, mage hand can pick up to 5 pounds up, and so you're talking cannonballs. They weigh about 5 pounds, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh no.
No.
I didn't realize
Much
it was five. I
heavier.
thought you were gonna say 50 pounds. That's more like it.
Yeah, because
Well,
those are made out of
hmm,
cast iron.
They
yeah,
got auto loading mechanisms that you have a hopper that it pulls, the mage hands pull the hopper and it releases one and rolls down in, and then you have powder preloaded.
oh, I would agree with that, with the exception of anything that rolls on rails would fall off of the rails the second you take like a small wave, I
Yeah.
imagine. But we can revisit the cannons later.
We'll revisit the cannons, yes.
Yeah, I was thinking, captain's quarters. The guy's gotta have traps everywhere. You're not just opening up the door to the captain's room without his permission and getting away with it.
True. I feel like a pirate captain, like specifically a gnomish pirate captain, would have made or stolen a like rug of smothering.
Yes. Yes, I like it.
That's totally what decorates the floor right in front of his desk.
Yep. So we got captain's quarters with rug of smothering right in front of the desk. So desk, rug.
So that if anybody tried to pull a mutiny like right in his face, he could just like no.
Oh, and now also a traditional thing on these vessels is the aft side of his quarters. There's a little door and a little small balcony so that he could step out there, get a breath of fresh air, and look out. What if the balcony was like illusory or had a trapdoor in it? So if you weren't careful enough, you went back there, you go for a little dip in the drink.
Ooh.
I love that just being an illusory balcony.
Catwalk or balcony, yeah.
Because then it's also like a vanity thing. Like I have this wonderful looking balcony. Psych.
Everyone's so jealous of it. Yeah, why don't you go out and test it out? Feel how smooth that handrail is.
Yep. That's perfect.
But of course, the captain keeps a treasure chest of some very important documents, valuables, some treasures in there. So, A, that thing has to be locked. But B, how would you trap that chest?
Poison pricks.
Contact poison.
Contact poison. I like contact
I'm gonna
poison.
steal it out of the last episode, one of the last episodes.
Yeah,
We're gonna
we
get
didn't
Combat
use
Teddy
contact
back.
poison.
No, but he talked about it. Combat Teddy talked about it.
That was
That's
how
too.
his powerful character got all the safety checks passed, with the exception of not checking for that, and then dies.
Contact poison. What would be the DC for that?
Oh goodness. I feel like this, it's unassuming that this would be the most difficult thing because it's so early. It's like the top deck. But this is the captain we're talking about. So I think this is going to be one of the hardest checks of the entire ship.
DC 18 investigation.
Like second to the main treasure hold itself, I mean.
Oh, you mean like 18 Constitution to save against the poison, or like investigation to find it?
Let's make it a DC 18 to save against the poison for half. And then a DC 20 to investigate.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
And the poison does like what, 3d12 poison damage?
Oh, let's do 5d6.
Yeah.
What do you think, Captain Waffles?
I think nobody goes around touching my chest and gets away with it. Sweet. So, yeah, I imagine now for getting past the traps, there's got to be some sweet things and curios and little artifacts of interest sprawled around the room here. So I'd imagine there's probably like several well-detailed charts and, clues to further buried treasure, whatnot, and keys to other chests back at their home base.
So we haven't done anything with that desk. I think we should
Hmm.
do some stuff with the desk. Make sure, outline a couple of charts or maps in there, and then throw one trap in there. Thoughts?
What if it was like that puzzle desk from National Treasure 2?
Oh, yep.
Hit me with the description.
So, man, Sandy, do you remember it? Because I have an idea, but I don't know if it's 100% what happens.
So basically, in that National Treasure 2, the hit Oscar-winning movie, Nicolas Cage is feeling around the president's desk, not like that, and he notices that different pieces on like the detailed wood carvings on the different corners of the desk can like move like a different locking mechanism. Like a tumbler lock mechanism. So
Oh, and didn't that desk come from a sunken ship too?
yes, it was made from the bones of a sunken ship.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, it's something like the details and the carvings in it. And there was probably like a stamp of the vessel it came from, or the stamp of this vessel, and established 1883 or whatever. But those are secretly a like code, and if you switch the numbers around like a padlock, it opens up a secret compartment.
Yep.
So I like that. So how's this for a combination thought? We throw a date before you enter the captain's quarters. It says like ship built in 1220. And so we have one each one equals a quarter rotation, so they have to rotate the first one quarter rotation, the second one 2 quarter rotations, the third one 2 quarter rotations, and then the last one no rotations.
Oh, I like it. And also, what if inside one of the non-secret hidden compartments of the desk, the number is found in there on a literal pink slip, like it's a car?
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
So I would want to modify that a little bit, like as far as the perhaps we have still the date that it was built on some paperwork in there, but we also have like a number for the numbers assigned to each of the corners in there. So it shows like top left of the desk equals 1, right northwards. Well, the right side of the desk equals 2, and then bottom 3, and then 4. And he just wrote 1, 2, 3, 4 under there.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I imagine any DMs have their own ideas for puzzles on a desk. They could probably modify things around a little bit to make it a little bit, more elaborate, or at any rate, just different from what we said.
Depending on how their players handle other traps.
Yeah, yeah. You might just want to say it's already found open.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Might want to.
I kind of like this for the captain's quarters. Oh yeah, and if people really like to role play, there's gonna be a dresser full of some fine clothing, so the bards can be happy.
Yeah. Bards can do their pirate cosplay.
Yeah.
Cool. I feel pretty satisfied with the captain's quarters.
Yep.
Okay. So, now above it and slightly shifted aft, it's like technically the most aft hanging part of the superstructure is the poop deck. So that poop can actually fall off. I don't know. Should we do anything special with that, or is it literally just like, oh, it's a toilet? That's it.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd say it's just a toilet.
The other thought is, do we want the illusion bit to be visible, or you can see like the toilet bits from the downstairs illusion area? If you like, hypothetically, if they went up first and looked down, let's say they could see the balcony.
Oh, but
And get like an advantage on realizing it's
because they would realize, oh, the poop would literally just fall down onto the captain's balcony. What the heck?
Well, that's why I said it slid more aft than the captain's balcony.
Oh yeah.
So that the way their design doesn't land on it. But it could potentially be a hole big enough that some small-sized creature in the party, like if they had another gnome of their own or a tiny-sized creature, would be able to crawl through the disgusting poop hole and land on the balcony and try to like reach the back entrance. But you'd have to like stick your head down through in order to see it. So
I guess it just depends on whether players want to keep their dignity.
Okay.
All right, moving on.
Players that we've played with, for a fact someone would be doing it.
Possibly.
Okay, so otherwise it's just like a normal outhouse.
So other thing, because we're going to the captain's quarters, where's the captain?
Well, I'd assume he's either calling shots on deck or by the time it's boarded, if he's kind of cowardly, he's in there with the door locked, letting his first mate handle it.
Gotcha. And then do we want to like steal the bandit captain stat block from the 5e manual, which is 65 hit points, studded leather armor, gives him an AC of 15, 3 attacks per round. 2 with a scimitar and 1 with his dagger.
Either that or something I like doing is actually like if I have like a big boss like that, designing them around a specific like 3rd level subclass. If you just made it like basically like you're rolling up a character's stats, maybe give him a feat or whatever, and make him like a swashbuckler rogue or something. That could be fun
make
too.
Make him 4th level, give him that feat, make him a swashbuckler.
Makes sense. And of course, we got to figure out a way to modify this so it's not just a standard old ship you'd see in our world, because there is magic. But for the most part, I imagine there's going to be a lot of melee combat and like close quarters.
Yeah.
So, that one feat for a paladin where if he's adjacent to someone who's getting attacked, he can like move people around. This is like the one time that would actually come in really handy.
I like it. And I think goblins get the same, just in the opposite direction, where they can redirect blows from themselves. So just make it, they can redirect blows towards the captain.
Yeah.
Oh, what if the gnomes had a bunch of goblin slaves doing rowing when there wasn't wind and actually loading the cannonballs?
There's just a bunch of goblins on like the bottom level that are all being like
malnourished, raggedy treated, but they get just enough glimpses of gold to keep them on there. Plus, the taste of the whip is very bitter.
I like it.
Okay, I think now we're to the point where we need to decide on like crew makeup. So let's throw a dozen goblins down where they're rowing. Sound like a fair number?
Doesn't. Well, I'm thinking there's 8 holes on each side because we got to go down a deck now. So beneath the main deck is the gunnery deck, and we've already said we got 8 holes on each side for the 16 cannons. So 16 goblins?
Yeah.
You can pull the cannons back, stick a oar out through it.
So 16 goblins.
And I would probably suggest too that the party that's raiding this thing isn't working just for themselves, but they have their own crewmates as well, kind of causing a fray for this first 2 decks, because it's just like open raiding. Trying to take on 16 things with just like 4 players might be a challenge.
I mean, they're goblins. They're trash mobs, and if they're working as slaves, they're just going to be doing unarmed attacks.
Yeah, or maybe like one of them found a dagger or something, like a kitchen knife. So.
Or if they use their shackles to try to garrote someone.
Yeah. That's the other thing, is if they're slaves, like Ben-Hur style rowers, they're already chained up, so you can literally just walk past them.
Yeah, what are they going to do? Reach out and claw you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just put 18
can still bite you.
Parenthesis restrained with shackles.
Depending on what players do on the main deck, they may not be restrained anymore. And things DMs might also have to deal with is if a entrepreneur bard tried to convince them to turn on their gnomish masters.
Oh, guys, I have an idea. So what if these slaves, they're not restrained because a couple of the magic users have them perpetually under the charm spell so that they obey them gleefully, get more productivity out of them, and they intentionally spike their food rations to make them fail the saving throw every single day against the charm spell.
I like it. I'm putting a line through the restrained, charmed.
also like the idea of kind of like how you said like the trapdoor balcony. I like the idea since this is like the main crew or the pirates that are running this are gnomes, that there's just a bunch of like really tiny little hidden passages and like cupboards that the gnomes can like move around on. So like maybe when the people raid the ship, they get onto the main deck of the ship and there's like no one there, and then like a gnome pops open a little like hidden trapdoor and shoots out a magic missile, or another one like casts some thunder wave and then runs behind some barrels or something.
Yeah, and then they pick up the barrels and he's not there anymore.
Yeah.
I like that. I like the hit and run guerrilla fighting for the first encounter topside.
That way it's not just an all-out brawl that can't be controlled that well. Then, of course, if you have a halfling or a gnome of your own, then they can find those passages and kind of figure them out.
Indeed.
So are we thinking 8? I'm thinking 8 gnomes. 8 gnomes give them spellcasting, and then the captain.
So we've got like the main deck, and the gunnery deck is kind of open. So this is one where you would actually be able to use some ranged guys, because that would span the entire. What we say earlier, the main deck was like
160
feet. Yeah, so this would be like 140. Not as long. Or no, maybe like 120, 100 to 120, and then start more steeply shortening up. And yeah, so that's pretty much entirely open so that you can see the whole array of cannons and everything. But the next deck down is like stores, the beginning of stores. So you'd have, of course, a bunch of cannonballs right there so that you could just pass them up and load them into the cannons next deck up. And, miscellaneous ship things you need, extra lines perhaps, and tons of good old barrels full of alcohol, because that preserves, and that's the excuse we're going with.
I like it. Now, are the cannonballs somehow you said about talking about ways to make it different? Is the cannonballs themselves like arcanely? Is the like explosive charge in there been like juiced with arcane energies, or?
Yo, what do we think about the catapult spell?
You'll have to remind me how that works.
So give me a second. Let me open it. So catapult as written, it would be a means of propelling the cannonballs, particularly if we're already using casters. I think it might make sense to do away with the cannons and just work it as they have tied down cannonballs, which again, the weight restriction is up to 5 pounds, but the object flies in a straight line. When you cast catapult, any 1 to 5 pound object within range that isn't being worn or carried flies in a straight line 90 feet in a direction before falling to the ground. Is stopped early to impact a solid surface. The object struck takes 3d8 bludgeoning damage.
I feel like they'd still have to have cannons,
Yeah,
though,
that's only
because
90
they would be
feet.
activating
Yeah.
in naval combat. But
Yeah, like a 30+ pound cannonball is going to do a whole lot more, I'd think, than like 3d8 damage.
We could also run with ballista.
Ooh, what if there's like a giant rotary ballista on the top deck, and that's like the main menace trying to board?
Yeah, because gnomes are inventors and smart and arcane stuff. So giant middle of the ship ballista that's raised it up like 10 feet above everything else.
That's sick. And then, of course, you got to divert some of the charmed slaves to be bringing up the huge bolts for it.
Yep. So as written, ballistas in D&D take 1 action to load, 1 action to aim, 1 action to fire, or 3 people to man. So
Okay.
if we're running with 8 people and it's just one freaking massive ballista, I think it makes sense our crew size to be 8.
And let's see. So, back to the stores deck. This is where I imagine DMs can be kind of creative with their arrangement, because there would be some partitions between different areas of what categories being stored, whether food, lines, metallic things, weaponry, and I think on this level there's going to be bunks, berths, or like hammocks, not bunks.
Yeah.
So would there be any? No, during a fight, I don't think there would be anybody sleeping. There's no off watch during a fight.
That's the other thing is we could, depending on how your party encounters this, they could stealth in. And so here's where you'd put half the crew resting.
True. Start
So you'd
gunning
have
while they sleep.
4 of the casters on duty up on the top deck. Once found, you can have that hit and run sort of combat. Or if you sneak up on them, you're going to have them encountered out in the open. And you can, like Assassin's Creed style, yeet them over the edge or deal with them however.
And I imagine if you stealthed it, these poor guys are working what's known as the square shift. So you have 6 hours on watch and then 6 hours off watch. And that's probably the most quickest way for you to age 5 times faster than a human being's supposed to, out of anything you can do to your body. So these guys are just like, when they're in their racks, they are zonked out, tired.
Gotcha. Just as a note, as written, ballistas are 480 foot long range and 3d10 piercing damage.
Oh, now that sounds appropriate.
And because it's magical, I might bump that up to 4d10 and then give it a +7 to hit instead of a +6. Because, again, magic gnomes.
Now, if you want to make the fight, the naval combat fight itself before the boarding, have a little bit more focus to it. I can imagine, too, maybe they've built some magical shield generator orb that's mounted on top of the poop deck roof or something like that. And it's like, oh, first you have to take out the shield and then you can go for the ballista or something like that. Yes.
Right. So I was going to ask you, Captain, on what you were wanting to do with the crow's nest.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I was kind of thinking of working our way down to the very bottom and then getting the top stuff.
Okay.
But we're pretty much there. I mean, you have this hold of easily accessible stuff, and then you'd have the lower hold underneath it, and that's more stuff that you have for storage, but it's all the things that you don't necessarily need to pull for everyday use yet. So a lot of food stuffs I can see down there, things that you're not going to use right away, and maybe like sandbags, heavier things, because anyone who's been on a ship knows that you want to have the heavier things lower. Have too many things up high, then it makes it unstable. And
is this where they would leave their prisoners, like the people that aren't the goblin slaves, but they're prisoners since it's the very most lowest point of the ship? Or
perhaps, yeah. So this is a treasure pirate vessel. So, either on this lowest hold or it and the hold above, on the aftmost part, which is the rearmost, you're going to have like a locked door or something, and that's where all the treasure is. And then maybe like the forward half of the stores is going to have your stuff. Yeah, and if they take prisoners, depending on how you play your pirates, they could be vicious, or they could also try to ransom off politicians, or really good commanders and generals or admirals that would be on vessels they've raided. Yeah, you probably have the brig down there. I would say the forward end though, because you don't want them right next to the treasure.
Right.
So
That makes
I
sense.
found a solution to our problem.
Hmm.
Wind wall. uh, and then you just have whoever cast wind wall and is keeping concentration on it, have them secret themselves away so that the party is forced to come on board because it completely ignores all arrows, bolts, and other projectiles being launched at targets behind the wind wall. So you just protect the ballista with a wind wall, and they're forced to
Ah,
come on board.
there you
Hmm.
go. But the last thing I would say on these lower decks is um, on the aft side of actually probably the gunnery deck, you're going to have the very long tiller for the rudder. And, of course, you can use your slaves to pull that because it's going to be massive. It's going to be hard to turn. And underneath the lower hold, this is something that's a sin for modern vessels, I would say. But they had to do it back then, is, oh, dare I say it, solid ballast. So they would have to fill after laying the keel and the initial like skeleton of the vessel. They would just drop buckets and buckets of big rocks and then lay boards down on top of it for the floor of the first deck. But you need to have all that weight down there on the bottom to get like the right ballast, the right balance point for how it sits in the water. So I don't know how useful that is, but if somebody's thinking about perhaps torpedoing the bottom of the vessel, then well, now the DM knows that there's like a layer of rocks there, so he or she can use it however they want.
Very useful to know. I didn't know that they would just shove rocks in the bottom of the boat because I without knowing, I just assumed like they had a metal reinforced bottom, so that way things would be balanced to be heavier at the bottom. But that was
Mhm.
more modern, uh, like like Ironsides. When I think about that, without reading any of the history of like building and such, that would be my reason for picturing that as a solid metal bottom.
Hmm. Mhm. That's true.
Indeed, indeed. What kind
Uh,
of treasure do we want to give them in the treasure hold, Captain?
well, you can hold a lot of treasure in a treasure hold vessel. Goodness, Darcy Driver, I think I need your help on this one because there's a lot. Like this is hordes of treasure.
So let's give them just like straight up 500 gold mixed between gold, gems, etc.
Mhm.
Do you know what would be hilarious? Is a tentacle rod?
A tentacle rod?
Yeah, you've never. Okay, I will read it. So
Enlighten me.
it's a rare item, requires attunement. It's made by the Drow. The rod is a magic weapon with the ends are three rubbery tentacles. While holding the rod, you can use an action to direct each tentacle to attack a creature you can see within 15 feet. The tentacle makes a melee attack roll with a +9. On a hit, the tentacle deals 1d6 bludgeoning damage. If you hit a target with all three tentacles, it must succeed on a DC 15 Constitution saving throw. On a failure, the creature's speed is halved and it has disadvantage on dexterity saving throws and can't use reactions for 1 minute. Moreover, on each of its turns, it can either you can use either an action or bonus action, but not both, to try and escape. Oh, it no correction. It can use either a bonus action or an action, not both. So it's effectively
Gotcha.
slowed because you can use an action or a bonus action. And at the end of each of your turns, you repeat the saving throw. Again, that's a DC 15 Constitution save. I think it's a fun thematic thing to be doing with pirates. Have a tentacle rod.
Yeah, I was just about to say it seems thematically correct. And another way that this can be played off too is, let's say this thing's brimming full of treasure, but the DM doesn't want to give so much treasure to the players. Well, there's going to be massive fees for hiring the vessel that they rode out on, if they did ride out and have a combat with them. And you got to pay your crew for their part, and you have to pay for damages to the vessels, yada yada yada. So by the time all that is said and done, there's a reasonable amount left over. Or it doesn't have to necessarily be full. Maybe it's half full, maybe they were running low and that's why this battle happened. There's not much left. But certainly you could toss in some like a magic item or two in there.
And then
the gold.
What do you guys think of a wand of lightning bolts? I think it's also thematically appropriate.
I think that would be something either the captain or the first mate would have to have on them, and they use on the party.
Yeah,
and then they get
Pick
that
up
as
the
like a
body.
reward.
Yeah.
I like Captain having it. Although we're kind of establishing him as a swashbuckler, which he can use magic items. Anyone can use the magic item. But if we're having a first mate, maybe we have the first mate be a primary caster and have the wand of lightning bolts.
I
like that idea.
I like having it kind of split up because then it's more than just one boss. It's almost like you have to tangle with two.
Yeah.
It's the crew. And I'd imagine, too, it's not just gold necessarily, but also just valuable things that intrinsically don't necessarily have value. You'd have to go and find the right buyer, and then you could make a lot of money.
Yep.
So, or like, like curios. But you could also have, mysterious artifacts that leads the group onto the next adventure, trying to figure out what it is, or, maybe it's a key to something else.
And then,
or that there's like a treasure map in the captain's desk or something that will lead them on to something else that the pirates were originally looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. And again, if you're running something like Salt Marsh, definitely you can fit this into that. And then what do you guys think about Sword of Wounding for the captain, which when you deal damage with it, the damage can only be regained through a short or long rest, not by regeneration or magic.
Ooh.
I like it.
Ooh, yeah, clever.
It's very cutthroat.
And then once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack with this magic weapon, it takes 1d4 necrotic damage for each time you've wounded it, and it then makes a DC 15 con save, ending the effect of all such wounds if it succeeds. Otherwise, it's a stacking 1d4 damage.
I think we've forgotten one of the most important parts of pirate ships. Just pirate stories. What is the name of our captain? What is his pirate name? What is the name of this vessel?
Ooh, true.
For vessel names, I personally like using like generic weapons and gems or metals. So, for instance, like the silver spear or
Ruby
Emerald Cutlass or
Emerald Cutlass. I like Emerald Cutlass.
What
do you think, Captain?
Emerald Cutlass. Oh, what color is the Sword of Wounding he has?
Let's see. The art is unspecific.
Okay.
Let's make it a ruby color.
Just to throw
the ruby
off,
cutlass.
Or just like a ruby cutlass on the emerald saber.
Like it.
So we're calling the ship the Emerald Saber.
And the captain's name is Sapphire. I'm Captain Sapphire.
Nobody said it was a dude.
That's true. That's true. It's like that Key and Peele skit.
We should make it a woman captain and have her be Captain Sapphire. I like it.
Yeah. We'll just have to be careful not to rip off Borderlands 2, the Pirate Booty DLC. Not too hard.
Yeah.
Why is there a Captain Sapphire there?
No, it's Captain Scarlet.
Oh.
But Captain Scarlet, Captain Sapphire.
We're very distinctly different.
Well, now that we've ripped it off, now they'll know.
Now they know.
They'll come for us. And all our money bags we're gonna make off this episode.
You're gonna have to readdress that DRM episode you had.
Yep.
Okay. But yeah, lastly, the top of the masts. Yeah, the lookouts, crow's nests, and all that. So we got like 3 primary masts, and yeah, they'd have some sizable platforms, I imagine. And you got to crawl up the netting to get up to it, classic thing. Oh, so I suppose it depends on the sea weather conditions, but there would probably have to be some sort of a strength check while climbing up there on the netting so that you don't slip off and fall into the drink.
Yep. Aside from if you have a tabaxi, because they have a climb speed, or other creatures with climb speed. Weather conditions, DC 15, because I mean, at that point you do have something to grab onto, but if it's rough weather, DC 15 strength check for the netting.
Yeah, maybe like a 10 for if it's calm seas, and then you can kind of like gauge in between wherever you want for however it's described.
Ooh, I really like the idea. I don't know what you guys would think about this. Or in the crow's nests, not having necessarily crows, but you put like, because you said there was 3 primary masts and some lookouts. So if we put in those like each a kenku, like the crossbow, or like sharpshooter or something like that, where they're just like sniping down fools from the highest.
Yes, they call it the crow's nest for a reason.
That's like the one group that's like not gnomes on the ship.
Besides the goblins as well.
Yeah, besides the goblins.
Yeah. I mean, you don't even really have to charm a kenku. They kind of have to just follow it around and do what someone says, right?
They love following. They love being minions. It's their purpose in life, generally.
Perfect.
Daddy, I want to be a minion.
Cool. And if people want to have like other little environmental traps, whenever you're below decks and even above decks, there's lanterns. So if you shatter them, all of a sudden you have a pool of oil that catches on fire, and then you have that for an environmental hazard.
Or people getting like caught up in ropes, maybe if the gnomes are trying to like
ooh, yes,
trap
never
them
get
and
caught
stuff like
in the
that.
bite. That's one of the first rules of working on a vessel. Never get caught in the bite of a line. Basically, if it loops over itself, because as they're being paid out or brought in, that can go tight and yoink. There you go.
Cool. I think we're good.
Yeah.
Hey, well, this has been fun. Thank you guys for listening. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share with a friend.
Thanks.
Bye, baby.
So I guess we're ending it there, huh? Quick, turn off Dave.